Hey, good morning, y'all. Today is 9.6, the quadratic formula, and it's discriminant, aka your last lesson. My cat's having a cow. My kid's gonna wake up here in a minute. We're gonna make it work. My camera on. 1, because I look a hot mess. 2, because it takes me forever to videotape like that. So we're just gonna go so that we can get this done quickly and efficiently. Today's objective is we're going to be able to determine the number of solutions a quadratic equation has using something called the discriminant formula. We're then going to use the information that we get from that to use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. Now, the first topic that we're going to talk about is the formula for the discriminant. So the formula for the discriminant is your b minus 4ac. And what it does is it shows us how many solutions a quadratic has, i.e. 1, 2, or none. So let's kind of take a peek at what does this mean? Remember in our last units, we talked about that a quadratic equation forms a parabola, and there are 3 types of parabolas that you might find. You might find one that has no solution, because remember, a solution is those x-coordinates where the parabola is crossing that x-axis. So it might have no solution, and it might have 1 solution, and that means that the vertex of the parabola is landing right on that x-axis, or it might have 2. So we have 3 different answers: a no real root, a 1 real root, and 2 distinct real roots. Okay, so we need to do in a little bit of work or memorizing. So the easiest thing that I like to do or to remember is that after you do the formula, so I'm going to write the formula out again, and that formula is b squared minus 4ac. And that's when we're using that idea of ax squared plus bx plus c. We're using, and we're connecting this b to this b. We're connecting this a to this a, and then we're connecting this c to this c. So when we fill out and plug into this formula, and if our final answer, if b, or our discriminant, so that should be a d. So if our d is greater than 0, it's going to have 2 answers. If d is equal to 0, it's going to have 0 answers. And if d is less than 0, it's going to have 1 answer. So the way that I kind of remember this is this: greater gets a greater number. 0 is 0, and less than gets a less number, even though 1 is more than 0. But that's the way that I kind of memorize it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try it now, and we're just remembering this formula and what each piece stands for. So here we go. And we're going to be able to determine how many solutions, or kind of where on this coordinate grid does this fall. Does this equation fall where it has none, where it has 1, where it has 2? Does this equation fall? And then that's kind of what you're going to get. You'll be able to get a rough estimate. So I am going to write up here, we're going to write, b squared minus 4ac. And then I'm just going to remind myself that it's ax squared plus bx plus c up here too. Okay, so my b is this, so the b is this value, so it's going to be this. So I'm going to put a 5 squared minus 4. That part is always the exact same. And then I do this to show that, because this is all one big multiplication problem. So then my A value is 1, and then my C value is 4. So now I just go ahead and simplify. So I'm going to start with my parentheses on the inside of my parentheses, and I'm going to get 4. And that is going to be times this negative 4. And then 5 squared is 25. Okay, now we're just going to go back in and simplify some more. So negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. And we get 25 minus 16. 25 minus 16 is 9. Okay, now I have to remind myself of these rules. So 9 is greater than 0, so there are 2 solutions. So let's get the right pen here. Let's land on the pen at all. 2 solutions. Okay, so far so good. Let's do another one together. Okay, my B is negative 12. And then that is going to be squared minus 4 times A, which is 4, times C, which is 9. Go ahead and start simplifying. So 4 times 9 is 36. That's going to be times negative 4 and negative 12 squared. So negative 12 times negative 12 is 144. Okay. Now 4 times 36 is also 144. So we end up with 144 minus 144. So we get 0. And we should remember that 0 has no solutions. Okay, your turn. Go ahead and pause it and give these a shot. Come back, check your work, and I'll talk to you about them. Okay, so I got one solution for both of them. If you didn't get one solution for both of them, make sure you pause it and check my work. Make sure you don't get into the habit. I gave you this one specifically because make sure you don't get into the habit of, well, I'm just going to look at my B value because if my B value, because this one has a positive B value, but only one solution. So just make sure you don't get into that. If you have any questions on that, make sure you kind of pop it and let me know. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is, ready? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, or the discriminant, all over 2a. We're getting our a's and our b's and our c's all from our quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. It does need to be set to 0, and a cannot be 0. Because then if a is 0, this formula becomes a linear function. So, hold on 1 second. All right, guys, are you ready for the best video ever? I'm telling you, it's great. It's 4 minutes, so it's going to take into a little bit of our time, but I had you watch it anyway.
Everybody freezes, we don't know what to do. Racking my brain.
Doesn't that just make you want to be in high school and make videos about the quadratic formula? I'm sure it does. Anyway, there's another one that you could watch that might be a little bit easier, and it's to help you memorize, and I cannot figure out what button I need to push here. It's to help you memorize the quadratic formula. This one's 32 seconds. We're going to watch this one real quick. This one might be easier, but I wanted to give you a couple of different options. If you look, there's a ton in here. This one right here is actually really good, but it involves talking about all different ways of solving the quadratic equation. So anyway, we're going to watch this one more. That's 30 seconds. It's even more annoying than the last one, if you can actually believe it. And hopefully, though, it'll get stuck in your head. So I believe it is, let's see, this one. We might get an ad here. Nope.
X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
Go ahead, sing it with them.
X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
All right, so that's going to be it for our fun videos today. But the biggest thing to remember is that realistically, you've got your quadratic formula that is, it's a plug and chug situation. So negative b plus or minus the square root, your discriminant b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And when we go back to all of the different ways that we used to solve quadratics, all of these pieces come into play. So we just talked about the discriminant, so that's right here. We've talked about finding perfect squares, that's right here. We've talked about multiplying by the your a value or dividing it by your a value in order to factor. So all of these are now coming into play with the quadratic formula. So biggest thing, or kind of our steps that we're going to do, there are 3 steps. So step 1 is just make sure it's set to equal. So set it to equal or to 0. set to equal 0. So that means that we have to make sure that it is in standard form and that we've got it set to 0. If it's 4x squared plus 9x equals 7, you got to move that 7 over so that it's equal to 0. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to identify A, B, and C. And then you just plug and chug. And that's it. Plug it in. Plug it in, plug it in. Just like the old commercial. So we're going to do 2 together, and then I'm going to have you do 2. So my first one, it's set to 0. I don't need to do anything. Let's go ahead and identify my A. So my A is here, my B is here, my C is here. Don't forget this negative. I'm going to rewrite the quadratic formula up here so that I've got it. So I have x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Oh yeah, that was good. Okay. And then just remember that we have ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay. Okay. So the only other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in just so I'm using the right colors, and I'm going to get my a's, my b's, and my c over here. Okay. So now remember all of the symbols that go along with, so we have this negative b, that means the opposite of b. So right now in this example question, my 3 is positive, so I'm going to put a negative 3. If my 3 was negative, like it is over here, I would do positive 8. So you're always remembering that this is the opposite of. So, and then we're going to put everything in parentheses. So I have the opposite, I have the opposite of my b value, and my b value is 3, plus or minus, and this will make sense in a second, the square root of b, so in parentheses again, b, which is 3 again, squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, and c, which is negative 5, and I'm running into my space, but that's okay. Okay, negative 5, and then all of this is going to be over 2 times our a value, which is 2. Okay. Now we've just got to start plugging and chugging. Now, if you have a calculator, you could do this very quickly and easily. I'm going to go through these one by one. If you've got a calculator, seriously plug it in and chug it in. So I'm going to start simplifying up on the top. Negative 3 is just going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root. And then I'm going to go in here and simplify just like we did with our discriminant before. So I end up with 9 minus 8 times negative 5, and we'll simplify that. So negative 8 times negative 5 is positive 40. So I am actually going to go in and go like this and say, okay, plus 40. Okay, keep on, and then all of this is going to be over 4. There's a little bit of simplifying that we still need to do. You can see why I was saying that this is like a plug and chug thing. So then we end up with negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 40 is 49, all divided by 4. We're going to keep going. Now we're going to end up with 2 answers because of this right here. Because of that right there, we're going to end up with 2 answers. So now what we do is we say, okay, well, what's the square root of 49? The square root of 49 is 7. So now what we have is this. We have 2 equations. We have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 4 and negative 3 minus 7 divided by 4. So now when I go in and simplify those, negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So there's one of our solutions. Negative 3 minus 7 is 10. And then when we divide negative 10 by 4, we're going to get a decimal, and that's fine. I want you to go ahead and do decimals, but I want you to do your decimals to like the nearest hundredth. So when you put that into a calculator, you get 10 negative divided by 4. I get negative 2.5. So that's my other answer, 2.5. So the way that we write this, and I'm going to come down here so that you can see it. The way that we write it is in the braces, just like we did before, and then you put it in numerical order. So I'm going to say, okay, negative 2.5 and 1. There you go. There's your 2 answers. Let's do one more together. Sorry, this video is getting long. It's that sweet video with Adele. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Same thing that I just did up here. But I'm going to do it with this one over here. So, and let's see. What's going to be the easiest way of doing this? Let's make us a nice little space. Okay. I'll try to write a little bit smaller. Maybe if I make my brush a little bit smaller. Okay. So let's get started. So we have negative b. Oh, and I want to do this. Let's see. A is 1. And we don't have a c. So first thing that we need to do is we need to put this into standard form and get it set to 0. So we have x squared minus 8x. And then I'm going to move this over here by doing the opposite, minus 2x. Equals 0, and I need to combine these, so I have x squared minus 10x equals 0. Okay, so I don't have a c in this. So what is going to end up happening is when we do this piece right here, it's going to end up being b squared minus 0, because 4 times a, doesn't matter what it is, times c is 0. So it'll be b squared plus 0. But we're going to go in and do everything, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of what's going to happen here. So the opposite of b, so the opposite of our b, I should do this too. So a was green. Okay, so our a is 1 and our b is negative 10, and we don't have a c in this case. So, okay. Sorry. The opposite of b is negative 10. So the opposite of negative 10, cheapers. The smaller the pen gets, the harder it is to write. Plus or minus the square root. Negative 10 squared minus 4a, 4 times 1. And that was green, times our c, which is 0. We don't have a c. All of that is going to be over 2 times negative 10. Nope, or 2 times 1. Okay, so now we're going to start simplifying. So let's start on the inside of this square root and then also simplify the opposite of negative 10. So that's going to end up being, and I'm going to zoom in so this is a little easier for me to write, 10 plus or minus the square root, 10 squared, negative 10 squared is 100. So 100 minus 4 times negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times 0 all over 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, now we're going to keep simplifying. I already told you, but hopefully it makes sense a little bit more, that this right here is just going to be the 100. So we end up with 10 plus or minus 100 all over 2. Okay, so now we can break this up into our 2. So we have 10 plus 10 divided by 2 and 10 minus 10 divided by 2. Does that make sense? Because the square root of 100 is 10. Okay, So now let's go ahead and simplify to get our two answers. 10 plus 10 is 20, divided by 2 is 10. 10 minus 10 is 0, nothing, and I divide it between my two friends. We each get nothing. So my two final answers are 0 and 10. Okay? Pause it, give the next two a shot. All right, sorry, y'all, mine got really sloppy. But my first answer, I got -7 and 3. And then my second answer, I got -1.3 and 8. Check your work. If you didn't get those, check my work. And that's it. Today, like, the big concept of quadratics is there's quite a few ways to solve quadratic equations. The quadratic formula is likely the easiest and most efficient. The discriminant will tell you how many answers I have, so I can use that and the quadratic formula to ensure that I have the right answer. Go do your Math Excel and you're done. Tomorrow you have a little assignment, and then on Friday, that's it. A little quiz, and then your end of the year reflection. And let me know, shoot me an email, or maybe in a discussion board, I'll start a discussion board of like, what can we do to like say bye to each other. So I'll be sitting on Zoom. Have a great day, guys.